This story started probably when I was 12. I had started to grow hair in my underarms and had started to pop out like people do, girls anyway. And it was back in the ancient days of cream deodorant, one of those old fashioned jars, and you took the deodorant and you put it on like this. I guess my mother had noticed or something that I had changed this much and had developed a problem of having to use more and more and more of the the somebody was visiting us from out of town, and I had on a sleeveless dress because it was summer, and I was going through a growth spurt, so the dress was probably too small. And by that time, my mother had, I guess as an emergency, put me in one of her old white bras. I must have raised my arm for something. And later on, my mother like totally flipped out on me about all the deodorant in my underarm hair. And that's probably the point at which she gave me one of my father's old razors. It's actually strange to me that my mother started me off in one of her bras, and I do remember that it puckered quite a bit. My mother was really busty. She was busy, not like fat or anything like that, but she wasn't little in here like I am. So it's kind of funny that one of my first bras was hers, and I remember the straps were really uncomfortable and it was puckery, and I didn't understand why it had to be so puckery, and it was just really fucking uncomfortable when you first get used to wearing a bra. One day there was nothing, and then all of a sudden there was a fair-sized A cup. Like maybe I started out as a double A or something like that. I didn't like it. I I just didn't like it. It only got worse, of course. I am really lucky I inherited my father's physique tendencies. I don't get fat very easily, but there have been times of my life when, because of hormones, I would like spread a little bit, and adolescence was one. So I started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and whiter and whiter and whiter in the hips. I really hated it. I didn't see why that had to happen to my body. So I was filling out, and my mother was, it was like she was after me all the time, playing too rough. I was kind of a lump, and I couldn't play war. That was a game that we played on our block where half the kids um, in our group would play one side and the other half would play another side, and it's like we used the whole block to play tag. Essentially what it was tag. All of a sudden I was not allowed to do that anymore. I was not allowed to do things like turn cartwheels, and my mother said, those boys are looking at your body. You're not a little girl anymore. Those boys are looking at your body. You can't have boys seeing your body like that. So that was that. First the horrible bra, and then she started restricting what I wore because I am the hourglass, and apparently I have been so since I was 13. But the most horrible thing that happened to my body had not happened yet. When I was 13 going on 14, when all of a sudden I was a C cup. And my hips felt like they stretched from one coast to another. And we were in Kansas. I'm kind of surprised that it was years yet still until I developed an eating disorder. But the C cup, my breasts getting big that way, I felt like I couldn't do anything about the hips. I tend not to carry fat in that way that girls do, where they just sort of puff out. There, me, it's bone. If you hit it, you hurt your hand. I think that my trochanter, that's the head of the femur, the hip bone, I think it just must be unusually huge. And I had figured out that was bone. There was nothing I could do about that. But the breasts had to go. Those C's, those had to go.